I guess you could say I take the road less traveled. Pardon the pun.
That was the voice of January Trucker of the Month, Ken Brodeur, owner-operator out of Escondido, California, speaking to his circuitous path to trucking over 3 decades of prior IT technician and music industry careers. He leased and then purchased his first and current truck in 2016, a new Kenworth W9 that he's kept in great working order ever since, with a diligent maintenance approach, some good luck, and plenty in the way of shrewd decision-making over tumultuous years for trucking, the economy in general, and more. I'm Todd Dills, your host as usual for this February 10th edition of Overdrive Radio, where we'll hear some of Brodeur's story in his own words, in conversation with Overdrive's own senior editor Matt Cole for this first Trucker of the Month honoree of 2025. The flatbedder's experienced highs and lows through his now half-decade in business with authority. Before that, leased Landstar, learning from successes and failures and putting them into practice. In essence, as a close friend in the business said about him in Cole's feature story, Brodeur's just, quote, one of them good old success stories in trucking. In some ways, it's a story that repeats itself over and over again for owner-operators who experience success balancing revenue against costs for solid income. It's a tale of a man who, quote, started with a big company and just moved his way up, bought himself a truck, got himself a trailer, and watched his P's and Q's along the way. Just a true owner-operator, end quote. After the break, owner-operator Ken Brodeur's story in his own words. So keep tuned.
Winter's here, and your diesel engine is about to face its toughest test. When temperatures drop, don't let gelled fuel leave you stranded. With House Diesel Treat, the #1 anti-gel on the market, you're protected. It prevents fuel from gelling, removes water, stops deposits, and even lubricates your fuel system. Gelling or icing emergency? Count on House Diesel Lifeline to get you back on the road fast. No mixing, no filter replacements, just reliable alcohol-free rescue from the brand you know and trust. Get House. Stay rolling.
Find more information about Howe's full line of fuel treatments at HOWES, houseproducts.com. Here's Brodeur, harking back to his outlook on work and technology as a young kid, part of which eventually would drive him into the physical economy of freight movement decades later.
When I was a young kid, I wanted to do something as a career, because I saw back then how technology would wipe people out. You know, they'd spend a lifetime doing something and then they became useless, and they'd have a lifelong skill that became, you know, it was obsolete. And so I thought, well, what am I going to do? My initial, you know, there was a lot of things I wanted to do in life. I've never really got to do a lot of the things I wanted to do. Initially, I wanted to be an airline pilot or fly airplanes, which is kind of like interesting because it relates to trucks in the sense that you're dealing with a machine, a large machine, and piloting it, if you will. And I couldn't do it, or I probably could have, but my dad told me, I wear glasses, I was nearsighted. My dad said you had to go to the Navy and become a jet pilot, and you had to have good eyesight, and it was discouraging. So, you know, then I went into ice hockey, and I was thinking about coming pro with that for a while, but my fault is I didn't concentrate on it and focus on it enough. When I got to college, I was having too much of a good time. And the third thing I ended up wanting to do was, you know, actually getting into music. In the meanwhile, I had to figure out a way to, and I actually had a recording studio, pioneered digital recording in the late part of the last century. And, but in the process, you have to do something to make a living. So I went to school at Kent State, went to business school, and I ended up dropping out because I think business school teaches you how to operate for a business. It doesn't teach you how to go into business. So I said, this is not for me. I mean, I learned a little bit about accounting. I liked finance. Real estate appraisal was an interesting concept, but even that, they didn't have a degree back in those days for that sort of thing. And so, and I ended up going to school for electronic engineering in a technical school. Again, it wasn't accredited, so I never did get a college degree for all this stuff, but I have the equivalent of at least a bachelor's degree from all my education, but accredited schools was not my concern. I was more interested in just learning knowledge. I went into the IT industry for about 30 years. And even there, I didn't want to sit on it's ironic. I didn't want to sit on my butt. Look what I do now. And so I became a technician. I didn't want to become a programmer. You know, I ended up, even as a technician in the computer industry, I pretty much did everything you could do to make $1 million. I just realized early on, I probably always wanted to have my own business. Mm-hmm. Be my own man. I once heard a guy from Lebanon say that his father believed the best thing a man can do is man or woman. I mean, the word man is short for human, right? So for anybody, I think the most important thing you can do is have your own thing, your own business. It's hard to really become a mature person until you actually have to deal with the world firsthand. When you're working for somebody, you're under a script, if you will. You're dealing with, it's like in the military, you know, you follow command. And that wasn't really for me so much. Now, never did really think about becoming a truck driver. You know, like I said, I dabbled in music. I was trying to do things. I had, in early 90s, I was doing a lot of contract work in the computer industry. So I was getting my feet wet with doing my own business then. And then, you know, kind of a gig worker. And finally, in 2007, after about 30 years or so of working in the IT world, I found out this fact later. They shipped like 70% of the jobs overseas. There was a point where I was making $45 an hour in the end of the last century doing router work, you know, installing, maintaining. I like the technical end of the fixing end of it, you know, because you could move around. And in 2007, my second to last job, I was making $17 an hour. I'm going, this is wrong. I'm spending all this time in this industry and I'm making less money over time. So I ended up getting laid off. Finally, it was just too hard to find any technical work. All they wanted to do is give me practically a minimum wage job after all my years of experience. Now I'm sitting around at the age of 50-something, and I'm like, this is not right. I didn't want to end up like this point in my life. It was very depressing. What am I going to do? And that's when I decided, look, I'm a road warrior.
He'd always been behind the wheel more than the average person, he knew.
So I figured, you know what? Maybe I could be a cab driver. And I was checking into that, and it's like, that just didn't do it for me. Then I thought, how about driving a truck? So I went to trucking school. At Roadmasters, I was in a class of 20 people. When it started, only 6 of us graduated. At this point, I'm the only one left out of that class that's even driving. One of 20 that graduated that's still driving. After Roadmasters, I went to Swift to get a job. There was 60 people in my class. And after the 6 weeks of training, they were going to meet again and then, you know, get you in your own truck for those that survived, if you will. And out of the 60 people, there was only 6 of us left. You start adding this up, I'm going, wow, you know, this kind of attrition in this, it's like, you know, this is worse than war. So then I ended up getting a job with Prime, and I wanted to do flatbed because sitting in a box truck was just too much inactivity for me. I figured at least if I'm throwing chains and straps and tarps, you know, that's at least a good physical workout. You're getting outside and doing stuff. So I liked that. And I did that for about a year. I met a gentleman who was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, and he got into truck driving, which I thought, that's weird. Interesting character there. He just wanted to do it, try it. He's really great guy. We stayed in touch, okay? I ended up going from Prime. I went to haul oil in North Dakota for about 5 months in the warmer part of the year, which actually is a harder time to drive because in the wintertime, you can drive, if everything's solid up there, you can drive anywhere. Springtime especially, it turns to mush. You got to be careful on those farm roads. And I could tell you a story. I have to write a book or something. All the stories a truck driver goes through is amazing. But anyhow, so I did that for a while and for 5 months. And then my buddy, his name was Mike Gay. He ended up offering to pay me $80,000 a year to team with him in a truck because he was trying to build a trucking business. I said, okay. He overpaid me because it just works out. You don't make that much more money teaming. You can do more work, but the pay still doesn't add up. I did that for about a year. In the meantime, because he had bought a truck and he was working for Landstar. Meanwhile, I was figuring out, I can do this too. I spent the whole year calculating it from A to Z, different which ways. And I said, I can do this.
At once, his credit was shot given the earlier bankruptcy. He found Lone Mountain Truck Leasing then.
They had a program. They didn't care about your credit rating so much, but they were more interested in your ability to drive. And I said, well, I think I can do this. And I explained to them what I was going to do. I was going to have a maintenance account, how I was going to deal with the finances. And I calculated it from A to Z in my head. And you only needed to put $10,000 down to get into a truck. I said, I can do that. And I had saved up the money. And so in December of 2016, I got my Kenworth W900L. In my first year, I made $250,000 in revenue because I drove 160-some thousand miles. I mean, I was scared to death. I'd fail. And my poor wife, God bless her, she had to deal with me not being around. And she still does. And it's tough. It's really tough being most truck drivers, over-the-road truck drivers will tell you they wouldn't wish this job on their worst enemy. Certainly not a family member. And I can understand why. You don't really have a life like a normal person. So I give my wife a lot of credit for that. But I try to spend more time.
Brodeur runs independent with his authority these days. The truck long since paid off and enjoying as much time as he can with his wife. Something of an easy decision with how rates have been for a couple of years now, he said. Though he's a one-man show, he's long since learned that in business, no man is doing anything entirely alone.
I like cliches because I think they're genius in the simplicity of an idea. They say war is business and business is war. So I figured, I went to business school, didn't learn how to do business. How about I study war? Maybe I'll learn how to do business. It's done more to help me survive in business, studying war, than anything else. So my last name is Brodeur. That's Old French. And so I have an interest in the history of France. And Napoleon is the most written about man in history, or at least used to be. In this modern age, I don't know if Elon Musk or Trump has him, but at least I've studied him. And I always would suggest that anybody that wants to learn about business, read Napoleon's Marshals. Why? Because no man is an island. You need your team. Even though I'm a one-trick pony, I'm a solo operator, I do have people that support me. I have an agent that I hire. He deals with the government stuff. I have an accountant that does my books. I have a tax person separate from my accountant that does my taxes, and he's also my financial advisor. I have other truck driver friends like that gentleman I mentioned, Michael Gay, that was a lieutenant colonel, and others that are resources to good places to do maintenance. So you build your network. And that's what I learned from reading the history of Napoleon and his marshals. You got to have a good team behind you because you can't do it all yourself. You got to have good resources. And having your own business and living on the road, people would ask questions like, I don't get it too often, but sometimes people, bring up the idea you must be lonely all there by yourself. The reality is when I'm on the road, I'm working 24/7.
He's learned quite a lot about the trucking and general business worlds the last decade and more over the road. Today, mostly hauling with a mix of brokers, aided by load boards and basic networking when he's running. Brodeur feels strongly that broker transactions ought to be handled more like real estate, with transparency on all payments associated with any load. He's seen boiler room-type tactics used by brokerage agents up close and personal, including in one memorable example of a load bound for a New England state.
I had a case one time taking a load to New England. They were going to offer me $1,100 for it. And I said, come on, you got to pay more than that. I ended up getting $17 for it. But when I got there, I ended up parking overnight in their dock. They let me do that, which was nice. And I I remember the owner came out and he was upset. He goes, "Man, they wanted to charge me all this money." He goes, "How much?" He initiated the conversation. He said, "How much did you get for this load?" I told him $1,700. He goes, "Oh, I guess that's not too bad. They were charging me $1,900. I thought it was too much." And I'm thinking, wow, that cost, this man paid $1,900 to get this load shipped, and they were offering me $11,000. That in the modern world, to be a truck driver in a solo operation is difficult. But I've learned the procedure of how to, when you're dealing with the government, you need to hire their professionals, like it or not. I used what was that, ADP as a payroll service, because they take care of all those legal shenanigans. First and foremost, understand that math is important. You got to understand the financial world, how it operates, your interest rate.
As noted earlier, Brodeur ran leased to Landstar for a lot of his early years with the 2016 Kenworth. His understanding of the wider modern bureaucracy around him would force his hand toward getting authority not long after, as California's AB5 law rendered traditional lease arrangements problematic. It took him 3 months to get everything done in that regard, during which he realized another lesson that in some ways guides him in business and life on the road to this day.
This is one of the problems I find in our modern world. The bureaucracy slows everything down. You want to be efficient and fast in doing business. You want to be, quick, right? That's what defines a business. You do good quality work at a fast, efficient pace. Anybody can fix things and build things, but without the proper tools and system of knowledge on how to do it quickly, you're not efficient. You're not as effective, which brings me to my point. And also, because of the world that we live in and the bureaucracy, I've learned to go slow, and I'm more interested in trying to figure out ways to cut costs than to make money. I'm limited in how much I can make because of the rates and how many hours a human being can work. So I can only make so much money, but I can certainly control my cost. Yeah. And so one of the things I do is I literally cook meals in my truck almost, well, at least I'm at a point now where I make an omelet. It's such a habit. I make an omelet every morning. I get up in an iron skillet with real butter and pasture-raised eggs, good quality Swiss cheese. I put garlic and onion and bell peppers in it. And I love it. I'm addicted to it. You gotta be healthy on the road. I like flatbedding for several reasons. The physical activity of it, it forces me to be strong. Every day when I'm home, I do 10 pull-ups, 30 push-ups. I do an Arnold Schwarzenegger lat thing where you take the weight in front of you and you go over the back of your head, and I do that 20 times, about 40 pounds of weight with that. And I stand on one leg for a minute, then I stand on the other leg for a minute, then I get in the squat position and stand like that for a minute. And I think it's a very effective exercise. My idea is when you get up in the morning, and it's a model after the military. In the military, you get up, you run so many miles, right? Yeah. Well, at my age, you just can't keep that kind of pace up. You just wear yourself down. But my little routine turns on my metabolism, and it maintains my strength, believe it or not. So you use quite a bit of your body. And just by doing these things, I've maintained my strength. Now, I wouldn't say I'm in the very greatest shape, but at the age of 67, I take no drugs. I hardly ever even take aspirin.
Diligent maintenance of the body for Brodeur extends to, you guessed it, like 2024 Trucker of the Year Alan Kitzhaber and his 4 million mile plus Kenworth T600. In some ways, Brodeur well knows the importance of maintenance of his 2016 W9.
Maintenance is important. I think you really have to stay on top of your truck. Now, I have a lot of little things that are insignificant, like interior lights that aren't working. And I believe that all accidents, put it this way, there's no such thing really as accidents. There's a series of errors that culminate in an accident. It usually starts, like I like to watch this thing on the YouTube. There's these pilots that show these plane crashes and what leads up to them. And it's always a series of problems that compound themselves. So based on that idea, as soon as I have an issue with my truck that's major, into the shop she goes. I take care of her right away, get her back up to speed. Science is a procedure, and I try to practice science. So what I do is and I used to do this when I did troubleshooting with computers because it's very complex. You can only change one variable at a time to see, is that the problem, and did that fix it? You don't change this, and this and see if it works. No. So what I've been doing with this truck, and until I get a new engine, my goal is to get 2 million miles on my engine before I have to rebuild it. And I'm doing that by a driving technique. And I'm also using a product called Extreme Friction Fighter. Mm-hmm. What it basically is I found this out because I got an oil sample test one time, and it said it was extremely high in silicon, but it used green silicon. They said it was good. It doesn't hurt the engine. And basically it's the silicon, I believe, that according to their sales pitch, creates a micron layer between the metals so they don't wear out. My goal is, my truck is paid for. My trailer's got 1 more year, and that's paid for. Is the reason I got into trucking was because of my computer career going the wrong direction and realizing, well, they just ship the jobs overseas. And I want to do something they can't ship overseas. They can't ship trucks overseas. Not only that, I don't care what the economy does or what kind of technology they're trying to force down your throat with these automated driving trucks, which also, by the way, I believe is dangerous. They can't ship it overseas. So no matter what happens, they're going to need trucks. So I realize this is a business I can always do. I won't get rich, most likely, but I have more control over my life.
Here's big congrats to January Trucker of the Month, Ken Brodeur of Escondido in Southern California. Brodeur's honor here puts him in the running for the 2025 Trucker of the Year Award from Overdrive, sponsored again this year by Commercial Vehicle Group and Boston Seating. Read more about him and his business in Matt Cole's feature story from last month at the Trucker of the Year section of overdriveonline.com, where you can also put your own business in the running for the 2025 award for a chance to win a custom-designed scale model replica of your truck as trophy, among other prizes. Plenty of bragging rights, too, of course. Do that, or nominate another deserving owner you've long admired via overdriveonline.com/toptrucker. That's overdriveonline.com/toptrucker. Find that link also in the show notes for the podcast, wherever you're listening. Overdrive Radio is on Spotify and SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Overdrive's Facebook page, and any listening platform, really. Leave us a review if you're enjoying these, and here's a big thanks in advance for it. Overdrive Radio is a production of Overdrive, the voice of the American trucker. It's edited and produced by me, Todd Dills, with the acoustic guitar and other support of trucker-songwriter Long Haul Paul Marhofer. The theme is Legend of the Snake Man by Marhofer, featuring the guitar work of Travis, the Snake Man himself, Whammock, Terry Two Socks Richardson on bass, keys by Tishomingo Jim Whitehead, and on drums, Andrew Marshall. The podcast is backed up further by Overdrive's own social media coordinator Jasmine Campbell, senior editor Matt Cole, executive editor Alex Lockey, and video editors Lawson Rudisell and Andrew Quinn. See you next week.